Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy, and this is a particular note if you drive an electric vehicle. Speaking of patrons, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So, a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Michael Kahn, Sarah Griffiths, Rob H., Ben White, Maximum Gravy, Austin Whitsit, John Kays, Tommy Swagnett, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Will Brax, Mel B. Styles, Troy Shuker, Bose Nail, Maris, Harry Blade, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Lost Cat FE, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Mike, Muted, Dick Earth Skeptic, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, The Real Gabster, Liam Nedrick Jr., Abraham Mohammed, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic936, Life is Short, theflatearthchannel.com, and David Wayne Foster. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I will hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show.
Alright, that's good.
Cool.
Hey, Nathan.
Hello.
We got somebody that wants to share something. Is Zygote or Zygot?
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, we're just talking about it. So I posted it a finding on the Ballbusters stream there. So if you can check that out, it's basically a couple of sources that show that the International Court of Justice, which is a UN court, international court, sort of the highest court in the internationally that exists, is using a method called arcs of circles to determine the territorial water limits of countries. And that method seems to be the same that is used in navigation on a flat surface.
Wow. You say in Ballbusters, did you mean in Skype Ballbusters?
Discord.
There's
So I just found that, so I haven't done any extensive study on that, but I think it has something to it because it directly refers to the method, which is basically well, you can see how it's worded.
No,
there.
talk us through it. I can't see, but assume I can. But anyway, talk us through it in your own words. You've just looked at this, so it's good to have it from you.
Okay, well, it's a lengthy description, but everybody can read it from the Ballbusters live stream text chat.
I can post it in Skype too for Nate.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
Just firing up Skype.
Can you give us what you gleaned from it? I know you already have once.
Yeah. So first of all, this is from like international law authorities. So basically, there's a reference to 3 different sources that are directly like some of the highest sources of international law that exist. Both including the Dictionary of International Law and a case in the International Court of Justice, and then also some commentary from the International Law Commission, which relates to some treaty preparation. And all of those reference basically this method called arcs of circles. And as it says, arcs of circles, the citations are there directly in the post. So it says, a method which is constantly used for determining the position of a point or object at sea is a new technique insofar as it is a method for delimiting the territorial sea. And then the other one is a little bit longer one, but basically what they say is that the sea navigation method is used also to determine the territorial borders of countries on the sea. And that method, as I understand, doesn't really work on a ball. So this is an indirect proof that they also know the nature of the...
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. So shout out to the International Court of Justice.
Yeah.
Thank you for running that by us. That's epic. Thank you for posting it in Master B so I could read along, Righteous. Really appreciate it.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Because it's cut and paste as a text, as a message. I'm not going to put it up on the screen just because there's all sorts of other people's stuff that runs down the side of Skype if I haven't got it actually as a photo or something. But don't worry. Thank you for sharing it, though. It was pretty much verbatim as you read it out. So, quote.
Yeah, there's another lengthier version or definition, but...
Did you want to read that out? I'd really appreciate it if you did, because it's... Who am I speaking to? I'm really sorry. I haven't got my
Okay,
Discord.
I need to take it a bit closer.
What's your name?
Alright, so this one is...
Zygote. Am I saying that right? Zygote.
Yeah, Zygote.
Zygote. Go ahead. Hey, 10th, by the way.
That's
Good morning.
So this one's from the commentary on the International Law Commission draft articles concerning the law of the sea, which then became the Geneva Convention on the Territorial Sea and the Contiguous Zone. And it says that T, capital T, being the breadth of the territorial sea, the line all the points of which are at a distance of t miles from the nearest point on the coast, may be obtained by means of a continuous series of arcs of circles drawn with a radius of t... I have to go to the door. We need to restart this later.
No, it's okay.
Just give me 1 minute.
That's okay. It gives me a second to take a screenshot of it so I can put it up on screen as well. Which I'm doing now. So just to summarise, just for 10th man who's just joined, this gentleman is reading us out a piece of information reference from the International Court of Justice in regards to how they decide how they're going to line up how much land for a given territory. And it's the same as the method used in, I think he's saying, celestial navigation, in terms of the amount of territory that they'll lay out, and triangulation to ascertain how much of the flat territory people are going to get assigned. Okay, so I've got this up on screen now for when that chap comes back.
Yo. Okay.
Back?
Hello.
Excellent. I've got it up on screen this time.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah, okay, let's restart that. So the T being the breadth of the territorial sea, the line, all the points of which are at a distance of t miles from the nearest point on the coast, may be obtained by means of continuous series of arcs or circles drawn with a radius of t miles from all points of the coastline. The outer limit of the territorial sea is formed by the most seaward arcs. In the case of a rugged coast, this line, although undulating, how do you pronounce this? Undulating.
Undulating, that's right, that's good.
Undulating will be less of a zigzag than if it followed all the sinuosities of the coast, because circles drawn from those points on the coast where it is most deeply indented will not usually affect the outer limit of the seaward arcs. In the case of a straight coast, or if the straight baseline method is followed, the arcs of circles method produces the same result as the strictly parallel line. So that's the citation, and to me these sound like exactly the same method that is used for navigation, basically.
Perfect. Thank you for reading it out. I assume your first language isn't English, right?
No.
You did very well.
Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you for dropping that on our doorstep. That's epic. I've posted it in... I say I've posted it. Righteous posted it in Master B if anyone else wants to check it out. Thank you, Zygote. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
More will come of that, I suspect.
Sorry,
No,
say
definitely.
again?
I think more
Did you say-
more will come of that, is what I suspect.
Yeah. I it was kind of an interesting thing to see that, because obviously I like the way you put it, that there's no way to change the reality, so it has to surface all over. And these are the kind of little, or not so little, perhaps, evidences of this, how they deal with the sort of the narrative, or molding the narrative into the reality. It's kind of hidden in these little passages.
I think at the higher levels they probably appreciate that the Western world religion is heliocentrism. If they have a certain level of intelligence, you would hope that they've researched it and seen it for what it is, or been educated that that is what it is. But, by the same token, you would also assume that people are trained in it as a religion that needs to be disseminated to the masses. Therefore, adhered to and reified in the same way the masses do. And then there's just the duper's delight element of knowing that that isn't actually how it is. That's just how we describe the world with our models. So, when it comes to actually laying out the land, well, yeah, we've got to do that flat. Doesn't mean that it isn't, would be the next words off the breath of one of these fundies that are punting this out into the world, because I'm sure in this instance, the International Court of Justice, if you asked anybody there if the Earth was a sphere, they'd say yes. And if you pointed out that they work it out flat, they'd say yes, of course we do. And so on and so forth.
Yeah,
They
I'm
would
reading it right
probably
now.
have they would probably have a clever way of answering so that they double speak it.
Perhaps.
It's done 5 days a week on the show, the double speak. But I'm reading it, and there at the bottom, in the case of a straight coast, or if the straight baseline method is followed, so now a secondary method, this one being a straight baseline method, if that's followed, the arcs of circle method produces the same result as the strictly parallel line. So, I mean, in one sentence right there,
Yeah,
it's like what you said the other day. They measure it flat and then they superimpose it on the ball, and they have two narratives going at the same time. When you dig down deep enough, you find the real narrative. It can never happen unless you get a straight measurement first.
yeah.
No, beautiful. Yeah, this is what I put in text the other day. I said, because we're slow rolling the sextant out on purpose, and it was to get more people to go, wow, what's this thing with the sextant? It's a new argument. I'm going to go look into it. And we got a lot of people looking into it right now, which is great. More eyes on the topic instead of just one or two people. And look what it's brought us. look at this little thing here. It's not that little at the end of the day, because now people will dig into this. And then Rob Durham came and showed that circles can't work on the globe. It's teardrops. And then, Brian's putting out videos. That was another one of the things, was the minutes of time and how the sky works. And Adam and I and others are working deeply on that one. There's so many things in the works behind the scenes that people have no idea the avalanche that's coming.
For people like Neil, who want the Western world to appreciate the world as flat as he does, do you think it could be too little too late? As in, the suppression of the subject's already taken place, we're nicely categorised into fringe content, things of that nature have already taken place. Therefore, showing how the powers that should not be literally delegate the world and its land by way of a flat plane, or that it's navigated as a flat plane, or that you couldn't navigate on a sphere because you need angles and you can't have curved adjacents. Is it the case that, the world isn't going to get to see it? Because, as much as I moan and bitch about... Go on.
The world is seeing it. We're looking at real estate property and going to find out the broker is a flat earther. And my daughter... He asked about us, and my daughter says, "Oh yeah, my daddy's on the show every day. They talk about the nature of Earth, and he believes it's flat." And the broker looks at her, says, "It is flat." And she found out for the first time that she knows him, and so it's like, wait a minute. It's flat, it, but you never talked to me about it. And I had to mention my dad before you said you knew it was flat. There's a lot of people that know it's flat. They're just not talking because they know what a controversial subject it is and how people go with the consensus narrative of people with tinfoil hats and conspiracy theorists and all that. So all the alphas step up right up the bat and take the horn. But there's an army of people that are following the alphas.
I think this is the original source. I don't know if you guys want to check out what Adam's just posted. It's actually in text. I'm getting my projector back. Bill's been paid. It's hopefully coming back next week. But while I've got this lower resolution projector, I can't actually read the text. It's of a large enough font for me to read it. I normally can't even read super chats on this screen. At a high resolution, obviously the text gets smaller. Anyway, I'm going to thumb through this later. Thank you so much for sending it, Adam. I know you're not here to thank, but... This is terrible. I shouldn't be reading this while I'm trying to gen you guys up for an exciting show, because you're all dead excited in Discord, aren't you? No, you compared us to the more important panel yesterday. No?
I'm excited.
Yeah, because you're on the main panel.
No, the word is getting out. That makes me happy.
No one's going to bite on my little divide and conquer thing? No? Go on, Stag. Go, Stag. Go.
I was just saying the peanut gallery's ready for action, man. Let's do it. Discord.
Did you just refer to yourself as the peanut gallery? The peanut gallery.
That's what you said.
No. that was wrong. The peanut gallery is the actual chat in YouTube. Goes in increments. So obviously, top of the pile is the guys in the main server panel, whatever you call it. Followed by you guys, yeah. Followed by the people who contribute to the chat, and then the audience. Now, technically speaking, it's actually the reverse order of importance. The audience is the most important, by far.
Well, we know who's least important. The chat skanks, right?
No, they're part of the audience. I thank them every day. Do you not listen to what I say on my outro? It's clearly because it gets said every day. Everyone stopped listening. liked, commented, shared, subscribed. Yeah, commented.
Absolutely. I would put them last on the totem pole though. They're there, but they're last. But yeah, part of the audience, I get it.
Okay, depends on which hat's on. So, Jose lost his channel. Jose JG Gonzalez. Subscribed today, started a new channel. And I went over, he republished an Annihilation. Fair enough, he obviously still thinks that was a win. Fine, whatever, if you want to publish that as your opening video, or one of your opening videos with a discussion with me, great, good for you, Jose. As a YouTuber, I felt awful. I wanted to know exactly why he'd lost his channel, so I can avoid the same fate. You know, if something's happened to him, I want to know why. He's been put in that position. That's terrible. Now, I've been in that position many times and managed to keep my channel going. You know, at one point I was under 19 copyright strikes across 3 channels. I kid you not. 3 is supposed to shut down your channel. I had 19. Anyway, I don't want to see it. As a YouTuber, I don't want to see that. Someone spent their, you know, a significant chunk of their time, effort, and put their heart and soul into building a YouTube channel, and then it gets wiped out of existence. That's harsh. Now, with a flat earth hat on, when you say, they're the scum of the earth, they're the pits, yeah, in the discussion they are. But as a YouTuber, no, they're the most important people here. They're the audience. And the same goes for Jose. I feel very bad for him. Nobody wants to lose their channel. And I've said it in the past when talking about people like Craig. As a YouTuber, I wish them every success. And that is the truth. I'm not just saying it. And in the case of Jose, it's like, that's terrible. Nobody wants to lose their channel. We disagree on the subject, but there's a symbiotic relationship in that regard. You know, he's our opponent, but we're both in the same boat. We're both on the same platform. So it's like, yeah, neither of us want to burn down the boat we stood on. So when a portion of it is rotten and he falls through it, you're like, oh, Jesus. The least I can do is put my arm out. So, you know, I've left him a message saying, look, if you want to come on the show. Previously he was banned because he was constantly whoring his show without permission in my chat. And I'm like, no, don't do that. This is my corner. You know, don't whore your show here. But in this case, it's like, no. It's a different scenario when someone gets a channel wiped out. So I've said to him, look, if you want to come along and tell people where to find you, you're welcome to. Because that's me with my YouTube hat on. I didn't even address the arguments and discussion that was old that he'd republished. It's like, what's the point? You know, we might get into that wrangle-dangle when he comes here to promote his channel. Great, if that's the case. He's immediately the opponent then, isn't he? But as a YouTuber, he's not. You know, he's in the same exact boat I am. And that breaks my heart to see that he's lost his channel. Not good.
Yeah, that's too bad. I hope he gets it back.
Yeah, it's crap.
He can bounce back. Yeah, I never want to, you know, take food out of somebody's mouth, you know, money out of their pocket. That's like the worst thing I feel you can do to somebody that you don't even know. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I can even look at it from a non-altruistic position and say, well, you know, in terms of me bettering my debate, a competitor assists me. As strange as that may sound, if you're familiar with business, you'd understand why. But a competitor is actually useful to you. And losing a competitor initially is great. Oh, right, I get their customers. But it doesn't drive business forward, losing a competitor. Which Jose is, you know, he runs a similar show to me. But there we go. That's life. That's life on YouTube. You can have your living wiped out in an instant.
It's like having a football club in one city and another football club in another city and on, and you're waiting for the weekly matches, and then one of them is going bankrupt, and you say, no, keep the league is better if you're in it. We need you in it.
Yeah.
Your people need to make money.
Exactly. While they're on the pitch, each of the opposing fans are screaming at each other how they're idiots and so on and so forth. But the moment the entire rival team gets wiped out in a bus crash, suddenly there's no match anymore.
Speaking of matches, Adam and I will be on Mitchell's today. Maybe we could announce that at the top of the hour. To dip or not to dip, that is the correction.
On a similar note, or kind of the opposite note, in, I don't know, a year ago, and then probably another 3 years or 2 years before that, the opponents, that would be the Globe side, said that they didn't want to come and gave a whole load of excuses. The reality is, if you take what I've just explained about the symbiotic relationship, you can also starve your opponent out of existence, or so it might seem. Right? You can apply that reverse logic, which is to say, well, if I don't feed you with anti-flat earth rhetoric, not that I want it, but if I don't, as an anti-flat earther, feed you, the flat earther, with information, then you'll die off, right? That's the logic being applied in reverse when you're on a losing streak. You have to apply some sort of battle strategy to win. Well, let's starve the opponent out of existence in this regard in terms of the discussion. Now, for me, you know, I'm having to pity the people on the globe side as they dwindle away and lose all the arguments. In other words, when you're standing on the top of the hill and your opponent's retreating away from your hill, and they go, yeah, but everybody away from this hill still believes as I do. That's the situation. You go, yeah, it's not a very good situation for you, but me at the top of the hill, I'm still here smiling. I'm sunbathing. So do you think I care that you're not trying to take this hill anymore? Not really. It's quite nice with you not trying to take the hill all the time. I'm happy at the top of the hill. I don't know about you guys, I'm quite cool here. But I'm not fighting off cognitive dissonance with a faith that isn't justifiable and being disproven constantly by the people on the top of this hill. They can still hear us from the bottom of the hill. That's the problem, isn't it? Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, how dare you, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy, and this is of particular note if you drive an electric vehicle. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected. And if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now, we are joined by Neil, 10th Man, Arwin trying to get in right in the middle of my introduction, of course, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome one and all.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. Nice to have you all. Everybody nicely warmed up. Been given a piece of information in the pre-show that was quite a revelation in terms of... maybe I'll let Zygote summarise it, as he's done it 3 times. I'm sure he's a dab hand at summarising his own point.
Oh, yeah. Well, this is a find from a law book, or actually Dictionary of International Law. And I posted the citations on the, well, I guess you reposted them so people can find them, but it's originally on the Ballbusters live stream. So what's being said here is basically that the when the International Court of Justice adjudicates disputes between states on their territorial limits, they use a method which is the same method that basically, or how would you describe the method? Method of positioning a point or object at sea.
You mean
So,
celestial navigation?
Yeah. Well, it has to be that, right? Because okay. Anyways, the citations are there. The documents where these come from are there, but the method is called arcs of circles, and I guess that's a legal term of art for this specific method. But the citation is arcs of circles, a method which is constantly used for determining the position of a point or object at sea, is a new technique insofar as it is a method for delimiting the territorial sea. And that quote is from an International Court of Justice case where they actually decided on some boundaries on the sea. So they basically say that the method they used is this method, which cannot work on a ball. And then there's another citation which is gives a little bit different perspective to it, but this is from a commentary by the International Law Commission on what then became the Geneva Convention on the Territorial Sea and the Contiguous Zone, the treaty. So the quote is, capital T being breadth of the territorial sea, the line, all the points of which are at a distance of t miles from the nearest point of the coast, may be obtained by means of a continuous series of arcs of circles drawn with a radius of t miles from all points on the coastline. The outer limit of the territorial sea is formed by the most seaward arcs. In the case of a rugged coast, this line, although undulating, will be less of a zigzag than if it followed all the sinuosities of the coast, because the circles drawn from those points on the coast where it is most deeply indented will not usually affect the outer limit of the seaward arcs. In the case of a straight coast, or if the straight baseline method is followed, the arcs of circles method produces the same result as the strictly parallel line. End of quote. So basically what this says is that when countries go to court to decide where their boundaries are, they use a method which doesn't work on a ball.
Epic. Thank you for summarising it so beautifully. I'm glad you went through it a couple of times on the pre-show because that was a really concise summary for the live audience. Brilliant. Thank you for exposing it to us. And thanks to Adam who posted the original document where it came from. I couldn't find it while I was scrolling through, but I'm sure someone will highlight it and this will get more attention moving forward, I'm certain. So yeah, it's just another expose of how the Earth is obviously observably, measurably and legally flat.
Legally. Great.
Be interesting to see Sleeping Warrior's take on this. Hopefully he'll get his eyes over it at some stage and then give his opinion. We'll see. Thank you again, Zygote.
Thanks.
Any evidence?
Well, it caught my eye. It caught my eye because I've been following your show for many years. So, thank you.
That's probably a testament to 10th Man then in this respect, because it's him that's focused on this since, well, before during the, while we were looking at the Black Swan, that's when 10th Man started looking at this. And then tentatively at the start of this year, he started presenting some of the information he'd been sharing with us behind the scenes to the pre-show audience and members, etc. And, dedicated fans who subscribe to my second channel. But that was tentative and has been dripped out slowly. And then sort of middle of this year, it's been segued onto the live show. And then now we are where we're at with, legal documents coming to light that show that, when in terms of how you would negotiate legally boundaries, you're going to do that using the same method that the celestial navigators use. And you've got a straight baseline. You've got a flat baseline. That's what they're talking about. So it's flat. Earth's flat.
You can add to your saying navigationally and legally flat now.
Right on. Yeah.
I mean,
So
if you just,
pretty cut
I
and shut.
find it.
Go ahead. Sorry.
There's couple of details there that I don't know. What's your take on the word that I cannot pronounce? When they speak about this
Okay.
undulating.
Undulations is moving up and down like the hills. Yeah.
Yeah. So if they acknowledge that, shouldn't they? Aren't they acknowledging that there are elevation differences?
Precisely. So they're saying that there's elevation changes in terms of the topography, which is kind of,
Yeah.
if you listen to Bev, when people misrepresent Bev, try thinking, because he doesn't declare to be a flat earther, contextually meaning I don't have a map and model and all sorts of other crazy crap that comes along with that stereotype of being a flat earther. Now, he also says you can demonstrate the earth's not flat because of, let's phrase it, undulations, if you will. So by that standard, it's like, well, what do you mean flat? Nothing's perfectly flat. We don't have a perfectly flat earth. It's not two-dimensional. We've got undulating land. But in terms of what you're asking further to that, well, that's an elevation change. Well, that would be an elevation change on a sphere also. You'd have to account for that, and they're not. That's your point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so they acknowledge it, but then in terms of the boundary being delimited or set, it's independent of that because the actual boundary extends vertically. The undulation doesn't. Let's say the elevation change doesn't affect that because of the method.
Right, but they then go on to explain how they're going to use a flat baseline. So
Yeah.
they're going to take an average. Now, if you take not an average, just a principle that applies all over in spite of the undulations, right? That's what they're doing.
can I comment?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm hoping somebody will at some stage.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting when you read documents. I always like to go to the end and the beginning, and then later take time with what's in the middle, because the beginning kind of sets out what they want to do. At the end, it's a nice, concise summary of what they said in the middle, which is usually bogged down with a lot of details, and you lose it unless you have the beginning and end. The middle is tough, but if you have that, the middle starts making sense. So in the old days, people referred to Earth as an irregular plane. And if someone says to me, what do you think the Earth is? I say, it's an irregular plane. That's why I'm a flat earther. And so obviously I know there's hills, valleys, and mountains, and that's just given. But some people need that extra explanation. But when you go to the last part of this thing before the source material comes out, in the case of a straight coast, okay, straight, we know what that means. Coast, we know what that means. Or if the straight baseline method is followed. Okay, straight baseline. Oh, another method than this circle arc method, a straight baseline method. So there's a secondary method to do the same measurement. The arcs of circles method produces the same result as the strictly parallel line, meaning the circle method produces the same results as a straight baseline method. So it's the doublespeak. It's just a language put there to make you think you're on the globe. But it's just telling you it's going to work the other way just as well, because they did it the other way first and then put it on the globe.
Right. It's one thing saying it in text just to lay the seeds or leave the seeds or however you want to metaphorically describe this. It's another to show a curved radius to a 2D circle, which is the problem that they'd face if they were here saying it verbally to us and putting it as an argument. Well, here in the document it says that it's the same. Well, no, you can't have a curved radius. That doesn't work once you describe it on a sphere. You can't get any angle measurements, and you don't have the parallel. How did they describe it? God, it was earlier on in the citation that was read out by Zygote. But they're describing having it parallel. Well, you can't do any of those things on a sphere. No,
and this same thing that we're seeing here is done with the sextant. Yeah, later today, if I may, let me plug Mitchell's show. Adam and I will be on Mitchell from Australia's show today, so subscribe to him, and we'll be talking about to dip or not to dip. That is the correction. Now you say, why are you bringing that up after this article? Well, it's very simple. The sextant can be used several ways. One way is at sea, using the natural horizon. The other way is on land, blocked by hills and buildings. The third way is in the sky in an airplane. You say, all right, well, what's the method? There's something that these three methods are doing has to coincide to get the right equation to work out where you're going, where you are in relationship to the star that you're sighting. There's something in those three that has to correspond to each other. Well, look at the title, to dip or not to dip. That is the correction. Which one of those three is dip measurement required? The one at sea. Which one of those three dip correction is not required? The one on land and the one on the airplane 30,000 feet in the air or 40 or whatever. Or third story building, for goodness sake, anywhere. No dip required. And the reason there's no dip required is because you can attain the very essence of what the sextant needs by the artificial horizon and the bubble sextant, because all you're establishing is horizontal. You need a horizontal, a baseline. Now at sea, you're using the natural horizon. You're on a ship or a small yacht. You have to get to sea level to get that horizontal. That's where you take height of eye of wherever you are and take it to sea level. That's the dip correction, so that you can match the bubble sextant horizontal and the artificial horizon horizontal. It's the same there. It's over for the ballers. They need a 90.
Got a flat Earth with this example, and it starts with a flat Earth and moves on to begging the question. And in the responses so far, they seem to think that sort of stepping over the fact that they've got to take a measurement in the first place is going to justify them starting by begging the question because they're so used to it. And makes life a lot easier for us when we just say, where'd you get the angle measurement? You know, as soon as they start begging the question, it's like, well, you had to make an measurement first. Where'd you get it? And the answer is from a flat plane, every single time.
Yeah, and this document says, from a legal way, there's no difference between the arcs of circle method or the straight baseline method. Who's pulling the wool over whose head? Circles are not straight lines. Something's going on here.
Just pull the wool over the eye, not the head.
I've heard some of these guys try to argue that the dip correction is to do with the curvature.
Well,
It's ridiculous.
If it does, it's added in different periodicals. But when you go to the sources that say what it is in the most succinct manner, as we're going to show when we talk about to dip or not to dip, that is correction on Mitchell's show later today, it's height of eye above sea level. Simple as that.
A bit of housekeeping. So, any evidence of a physical geometric spheroid horizon formerly known as the curve of the Earth? I don't think this is going to get far, this housekeeping session, because Adam's just joined. Given that he posted it to us, I'm pretty sure he's going to want to talk about it. Hey, Adam.
Hi, guys. Talk about what? Sorry, I've been... Oh,
right, okay. Any evidence of Earth curve?
Not since we last spoke, no. I'd posted something. I'd seen that thing that Righteous said. Is that what you're on about? That?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd just seen that literally. I was grabbing a cup of coffee, so I went and found the document to have a read later on today. But yeah, it does. It's talking, as far as I can see, about circles of equal altitude defining coastlines, but it's not. But it is the UN plotting them on a flat discussion. It's just circles drawn on the map. So that's the bit I could see, but it's a very long document, so there might be more in there. 38 pages. So it's a right long bedtime read. But it's UN stuff, which is quite interesting. It's talking about territorial designations, and like I say, how it's done, it does appear to be flat.
Yeah. It's quite a revelation. I mean, I didn't expect this show to start that stuff. I almost completely decided to forego housekeeping, but now you've joined. I'm glad this conversation is going to continue. Certainly intriguing enough to look at more, isn't it, Adam?
Well,
I can comment a little bit on that. So a little bit more. So from the legal perspective, I think the significant finding here is that it's referred to and it's actually used in a case. So this is this is already accepted law. So it's like a legal authority. So there's no disputing this anymore. But from a legal perspective, of course you can argue, but that doesn't change reality. So it's not just speculation, it's actually applied in the case.
What you're saying is that when we hear stories on the news about other countries violating international fishing water, because each country that has a coastline from the coast out to the sea, that's territorial water, and other countries can't come there and take out their fish. They can stay outside of that, and that's currently happening with countries now. That's what this is. Sounds like they needed this for, so they can know the boundaries as well.
Yeah,
it is a legal settling on how to divine in tricky circumstances. So the bit I'd skim read is talking about drawing circles of equal altitude into the vast sea around the most sticky out point to define your personal waters before it gets to international. And then it's talking about points where those would overlap between two territories, and in which case to necessitate to define the median point and draw the line boundary there. It's not specifically flat, I don't think. It's a legal point, but it's not. It's all. And this Article 5 straight baselines got me excited, but that's talking about the lines, how you draw them onto maps. If the coastlines wobbly, as coastlines tend to be, that it's not practical to draw a wobbly boundary. So you can draw a straight baseline approximating to the coast at certain distances, but there's no mention of the ball. There's no discussion as far as I can see of the ball, but I want to try and pick out and see if we've got any specifics that relate to it being.
Adam, in the document, does it say circle of equal altitude?
Yeah.
Okay. Well then let me jump on this then. Because I haven't read the document, but if it says circle of equal altitude on the document, then here where it says the arcs of circles method produces the same result as strictly parallel line, which is the straight baseline method, then that's a 2D circle with the radius coming out, and you're somewhere on that circle. It's a flat line. That's the arc. It's not an arc like a 3D arc. It's just the arc of a flat circle. Has to be if they're saying circle of equal altitude. But again, I'll read it too.
It's talking about plotting it on maps, if I'm being honest. Yeah. I'd like to pull more out of it, and there might be more in there, but the bit I'm seeing is just talking. It's only in the way in which it's defining it. It is defining it flat because it's talking about circles on flat maps. So it's not making any amendment to translate that onto a ball or how they might be different. But all it's doing here is literally just about plotting on maps with circles. They're not so much circles of equal altitude in that sense, but they are, because they're a true circle on the ground. And that's all it's saying. When it's talking about the arcs of circles method produces the same result as the strictly parallel line, that sounds quite interesting. But what it's meaning is you draw circles all the way along the coastline, and then just join those points up at the sticky points, and that's equivalent to the parallel line. So this is just, they're nice words, but they're not, I don't think they're relating against the ball. They're just relating to cartography, I think, really.
The way I saw it was that the first, the actual case citation does the link, because it says that a method which is constantly used for determining the position of a point or object at sea is a new technique insofar as the method for delimiting the territorial sea. So what's the method for determining the position of a point or object at sea? Because that's the method they're talking about. Or that's the method they applied to draw these boundaries.
Where's that in the document? Which?
Oh, this is in the fisheries case, the actual case.
Oh, within a case.
Yeah, page 129.
I'm happy for you to look this up. There's no pressure. I don't mind if there's dead air in this regard, so don't feel like there's any pressure on either of you to keep the conversation going when it's this juicy.
That would seem a more pertinent route to take. Sorry, what's your name, dude?
Zygote.
Like a hi. That would seem a more sensible route to take of what you highlighted there. That if there's a methodology that the court and the UN are recognising to define this, how that methodology works, that would seem, because it's recognised, isn't it? So you've just got to find what it is and define how it works. That would then indicate whether the UN is accepting these and their laws of the sea on a flat map, or whether they're going to put it onto a theoretical ball. And I would imagine in a court of law, it's going to be relating to the laws of the sea and not a theoretical ball. But that seems the sensible route to take, is to find what you've highlighted there. If they're saying there's a defined method, is to find that method.
Cool. Is there any more on this?
Not for me, because this is going to take a little research, but just from the summary, like I read here, in the case of a straight coast, or if the straight baseline method is followed, the arcs of circles method produces the same result as a strictly parallel line. I mean, I'm good with that, but it's going to be interesting to dig into it, see what the law case was. What was what is this fishery, Anglo-Norwegian fishery case all about? What was the complaint? And then they go into the details. But that last summary pretty much says it.
Can you read it out again? And then we'll round out on that note.
Yeah, in the case of a straight coast, or if the straight baseline method is followed, the arcs of circles method produces the same result as a strictly parallel line.
And can you translate that into flat Earth versus globe Earth English?
Let's go a little word by word then. In the case of a straight coast, we know what straight is, we know what a coast is. At least we do. I don't know about the anti-flat earthers, because they have a different definition for straight. Or if the straight baseline method is followed, okay, that's pretty simple. That's the adjacent on the right hand, a 90-degree right angle. The baseline method is followed. The arcs of circles method produces the same result as the strictly parallel line. Well, we know parallel lines don't cross, and we know they're not circles, they're lines. So, wow, a blow to the globe doublespeak here. I see it.
I don't.
I do, because what they do is they measure a flat, then they say we live on the ball, then they put in words like arcs and circles, but it was never arcs and circles to begin with. It was always flat.
Well, Adam, I know you've already expressed your objection once, but
I think this is generally a cartography description, what's going off here. So the arcs and circles. So the arcs and circles are what you draw from the coastline at a distance t, defined internationally or locally between people. These arcs and circles you draw off the coast, and that then defines your territorial water. What they're saying there is you can use the arc and circle method. It will produce the same result as drawing strictly parallel line along the general route of the coast. That's my very basic understanding of what I've read so far.
Well, I'm saying the same thing, but
Yeah.
I'm saying the anti-flat earthers, arcs and circles are something else to them. This is just a two-dimensional circle.
So the only bit of flat earthing that I can see is, again, with their arcs and circles, they're going to have a bendy R, aren't they? A bendy T length, because that would be their R, but if their R is going onto a ball, it hits that same problem that Rob Durham's doing. But that's the only bit of flat earth, ball earth I can see in there. It's that same. If you apply a circle on a map, it makes sense. If you then translate it to the ball, that R value, that T value is perverted and changed. It's not.
Correct. So basically what you're saying, now that I hear you, is they do a series of circles, much like circle of equal altitude with 3 sidings, and where they cross 3 times, that's where your location is as an observer. So they do a bunch of circles, and wherever they cross, they draw a straight line.
Yeah, a bunch of circles all the way along the coastline, and where those circles are in the sea, that's what defines your territorial water. So each circle's got the same R value, and you put it on the coast, and you draw the circle, and 5 miles out from that peninsula, that's where your territorial water ends. And you go along the coast, drawing these circles, and it will define your territorial water, I think.
Right.
You can take a similar sort of straight line, parallel method, and stuff.
Then we're saying
Just the same as drawing a parallel line, right, to the coast.
Yeah, I think so. But I said I've only skim read it past hours. So.
Then we're saying the same thing, because I'm speaking from the viewpoint of our opposition. Will say, oh, arcs of circles, that means no, that's not that arc of that circle. This is a 2-dimensional, just like a circle of equal altitude with a radius equidistant from each from each point, from that one point, that is.
Yeah, that's how I see it also, because they also contrast it to other methods. So basically, they say that this is it's a method that produces sort of a reasonable end result in drawing the territorial limit. So there are other methods of doing it, but this method that they happen to use and happen to acknowledge here is called the arcs of circles method. And that method, when it's applied, it's also acknowledged in the case to be constantly used for determining the position of a point or object at sea, which means basically navigation. So
yeah, see, once you've drawn that, sorry, carry on.
No, that's it.
That I think is the one. Once you've defined that point at sea on a map, then there has to be a methodology to define it at sea, if you see what I mean, which is going to be navigation, isn't it? To be there. How do you define whether you're in international waters or not? So that methodology of where you're taking the fish from has to have a way of it being defined legally. So you could say, well, I use this method, and I was definitely in British waters. They weren't Norwegian fish. Yeah. So there has to be a methodology that the law will recognise to say whether or not you were or were not in Norwegian or British waters. That I think would be what is that methodology that the courts recognise? That would be the next step where I'd be trying to find, if you could find that would be what would be.
Maybe it says in the document, but we're going to have to go through it. I mean, having them say it's the same as acquisition of your position at sea, that would be celestial navigation. But having it be the same as, what is the actual method? So we'll have to find that out.
Riley's still got access to his databases, because this is a law question. His law stuff would be really helpful. Give me a shout later and see.
Who, Anthony?
Yeah.
I said that originally. I was like, I'd be interested to see his take on this, because he'd scan read through it and go to the right bit that's relevant probably quicker than all of us.
And it seems a legal point to me, anyway. You're asking the UN and the court to make a statement legally as to what methodology is being accepted. That's a flat method. That's very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it'd be nice to get his take on it. Obviously, we're not going to be doing housekeeping now. We're at least halfway through the show, so given I couldn't even get the first question, and it's not really housekeeping if it's done after the halfway mark. So I think we will actually forego housekeeping today.
Can I get a mic check?
Hey Neil, we got a video check from you.
Sorry, I just got kicked off my job.
For what?
Somebody fell off a scaffold and died.
And that was your fault?
Nah, but they shut the whole freaking thing down. So, terrible, right before the holidays.
What job, Neil? What do? You do construction or steel or what?
Yeah, 85 J Street, Brooklyn, New York.
Makes toy globes.
Yeah, I do the flooring. So I sent a picture showing how I level the floors. It could be level, and also it could be flat, but not level, and that's just smooth. Missing.
That's cool. I was just wondering because I build the steel for the skyscrapers in New York.
Can you see a decent skyline from where you are, Neil?
When I'm up in the building, yeah. Why?
No, from the ground now.
Not really. It's too much stuff in the way.
No worries.
You can when you go across the river. When you're in New Jersey, you can see across the river. You can see the whole skyline and the base too.
Beautiful.
Okay. Thanks.
Well, why? What am I looking for if I do see the skyline?
Nothing. I just wanted to see. I just wanted you to put it on camera just to give us something nice to look at. That was all.
Oh, then I got to find them.
We'd be two-thirds.
Come back.
We'd normally be two-thirds of the way through housekeeping, but something else has come to light. So we haven't, housekeeping's supposed to be 5 minutes at the beginning of the show. That never ever is. It's just, get this out of the way quick, just to see if anybody's come up with anything from the globe side in these regards. Has anybody shown a curved adjacent yet? When everyone says no, somebody might come along and go, normally Anthony, who understands the concept, when he gets to the gravity question, he'll be like, actually, yes. And then he'll present what he's been presented or, what he's debunking. And so it moves on. So it's like housekeeping is supposed to be 5 minutes unless somebody's got something to add to it. Now, today, this would be in regards to the first question. So any evidence you can have a curved adjacent when measuring an elevation angle. Well, that's what we're talking about in this regard, right? And Adam's saying, well, other than the fact that it's got to be a flat baseline, I don't see anything other than that that's a flat earth proof. They're just talking about the cartography of it, right, and the layout. But then 10th man goes, yeah, but when you say other than it being a stone cold flat earth proof, we're both talking about the same thing then. But yeah, in terms of how it stacks up legally, that precedent's probably out there somewhere, and we'd need to know what it is in terms of what they say it's the same as when they compare it to celestial navigation. That's where we're at. Hence, negating the need for housekeeping, because curved adjacent's what we're talking about. That's why it's at the front of the list of housekeeping questions at the moment. I kind of expect this to be the things that come across our way in the near future, more and more.
Well, how do you even do that sort of geometry with a curved line?
You don't.
I mean, isn't that sort of geometry reliant on all lines being straight?
Yes, it is. That's correct. Nobody's working out
Yeah.
international waters and territory disputes using curved geodesics and bent radii.
There's
That's the
also a
point.
temporal point here because this case is from 1951. So what methods were available at that point?
Yeah.
For the
That
positioning
is
of
the
an
point,
object
isn't
at
it?
sea.
Well, theodolites were
I mean,
around,
the way I-
sextants were around.
I'm just
I
thinking
mean,
about it from the ball side. Like, if you've got a curve, you need to somehow turn that into a straight, flat line to be able to then do any geometry. So that's exactly what they must do. Just somehow straighten that curved line and then do the geometry and then get the result and then imagine that that's actually on a curved surface. They have to somehow turn that curved line into a straight one before they can go any further.
I have a book called Surveying and Leveling Instruments. It's a selected book for safekeeping. 1901 is the date. William Ford Stanley. And he goes through all the instruments for surveying and leveling. And it's table of contents is rich with topics, but basically, let me see what the last page is. Very thick, over 500 pages, and it's showing in pictures all the different surveying tools that man has used that they can categorize and explain. It's fantastic. This is a rich resource in the research I was doing. So yeah, it's been around.
But the list of techniques that you could use over ultra long distances, surely that would be a much shorter list.
Why they were navigating the oceans back in 1700s.
Well, Amelia Earhart and all of them had a sextant for their ocean journeys. Land, they've had the theodolites and all kinds of other instruments that work on the same method where it's got to be set to level before you even use it. So this is why in the ocean, when there's no landmarks, the horizon is the only landmark you got. And it's horizontal, flat. And that's
Yeah,
why
so
you use that.
so let's look at this. So what it says is that the arcs of circles is a method which is constantly used for determining the position of an object at sea. And they say this in 1951.
Yeah, that's
Can it be
circle of
anything
equal
else
altitude.
except sextant?
It's circle of equal altitude. There's only because it gives you the radii from the zenith position, the GP of the star is straight line to you. It's a radius.
Yeah, so
On
arcs
that
of circles has to mean that because it says that. But if this is some kind of a term of art for something else, then what was available that would be constantly used in 1951 for the same purpose? I don't think there are many alternatives there.
Well, at sea, you got rocking motion, so that's why they don't use a bubble sextant. And because of the same rocking motion, you don't use an artificial horizon. The only time you can use those two at sea is if it's perfectly calm water.
No, sorry to interrupt. I don't think he means that. I think he means, when he says use that, he means the sextant. What other tools have they got to use? And you're like, well, they can't use the artificial horizon with the sextant, and they can't use the bubble at sea with the sextant. So, yeah, you're kind of talking past each other a little bit. But you're saying, what other tools have they got? They've got the sextant, and how does the sextant work? Well, it works on a flat plane.
Yeah.
Well, they can go to an octant, they could go to a quadrant, they can use the older versions of the sextant, the astrolabe and all that. But why? When you got the nicer sextant that also gives you the micrometer drum and degrees and minutes. So
Perfect. That's what he was asking. That's what he was fishing for. What are the methods? You've just detailed them. So you said what was it? The two things that you just said?
Well, the cross staff, the octant, excuse me, the cross staff, the octant, the quadrant, they all astrolabe, they all led to the sextant now that we have.
They're just devices. They're not methods.
Right, they're all devices.
The method is what are we using? So are we using GPS to define this position? No, we can't be doing this. The guy's saying it's 1950s. Are we using the WGS 84? No, it's not 30 years to be invented yet. So what are the charts? How do we ascertain a point on the chart? Sorry, I'm sounding like Eli. I'm eating. Yeah, that to me is the method. Whatever equipment, a sextant, octant, staff, doesn't matter, because that's going to be employed within the method of defining it, which is, I think, different to the measuring device.
I see. So you're taking it one step back, where he's asking what other tools have they got available. You're saying, well, forget what tools are available, because there's all sorts of tools that comply to the only method that's going to be used, and that's triangulation in this regard.
Yeah, and I think that's the point legally that will be interesting. If this in law is defined via the laws of the sea, navigational charts, and not via any kind of new modern arbitrary system, but it's defined in law that way, then that's in law flat, isn't it?
Well, yeah, hold on. Let's just address that. Even if they did, you said your other method was triangulation or whatever they're going to claim it is with satellites and GPS, right? But that's still just going to be using three-dimensional flat grids, right? It's not going to be using anything different, is it?
Like, to me, it's the document that the documents they use. So if they're referring to ball cartography, then they're doing it on a ball, aren't they, in law? But if they're using old standard stuff, then that has no mention of fear in it, does it? So,
well, that's the bit I'm questioning. Sorry, I could have phrased it better. What is ball cartography?
It's not a real thing. We've demonstrated that it doesn't work. You can't do cartography. You can't navigate on a ball. You can't draw all these things out on a ball. They don't work. That's demonstrated by Rob.
Perfect. So, in answer to your question, I think it was Zygote. What are the tools? Well, what are the methods? Well, all of them are going to be based on a flat plane. You know why? It's the newest housekeeping question. You can't have a curved adjacent when measuring an elevation angle. It is that simple. All of the methods prior to now, and including GPS, we're all basically doing the same thing. Working on a grid.
Don't we have a recording from one of the opposition saying everything's from Cartesian references and then put into GPS?
I think it's Wolfie.
It's a killer statement coming from their own side.
The more you dig, the more you find it's got to work flat. And I know nobody on the panel's sort of expressing their excitement. We're all a bit dubious because we've been here before and we're used to opponents pulling out tiny little details that they claim will debunk it if we start jumping up and down and pulling the party popper strings. Well, yeah, because we've dealt with this sort of stuff before, we're hesitant. It's come up on a live show, so none of us are going to sort of, tell everyone to pop open the champagne. On the other hand, this is not surprising. Does this shock anybody on our side? No. We already know how it all gets navigated. So, does it shock us that we're finding documents that affirm that? Not really. But that's the kind of the reason why I sleep well at night and the anti-flat earthers don't.
Nathan, I would be your fiercest opponent on this subject if I knew we lived on a globe. But all my research has shown me we live on an irregular plane, and that celestial navigation needs a right angle triangle with a straight baseline from the GP of the star to the observer. 2 or more gives you a fixed triangulation. The research alone and the obvious nature of, no Earth-based Coriolis and all this stuff. I mean, you would have to, on purpose, deny reality to be a baller today, especially in the light of all the evidence we're showing.
It seems like, based on Adam's last statement, if there are no cartography methods that are incorporating 8 inches per mile drop, which we've shown time and time again, you've only got to go to Google Earth and draw an elevation profile, and you can see it's done in a square box with a flat baseline and no drop. So, given that that's the case, I'm sure there's going to be other examples where the ball hasn't been factored into a legal scenario in this regard. Because how can it be? We're not on a ball. It's just a religion. So it's not going to be factored into any legal entities. If it was, there'd be people all over the place trying to scam more land. Because you could claim, well, the measurement's got to be larger because I'm going over the arc length over the top of the flat plane you use with a circle of equal altitude to divvy out the land. I want to use this ball geometry because that gives me a greater distance on the radius value or the half radius value. So if I've got a curved arced radius, that means that when I measure it, it's longer. That means my land's bigger. I mean, you could blag the system if there was such a thing as ball Earth cartography. But, maybe someone can tell me what that is. Because so far, every time you look into it, shockingly, yeah, it's based on a flat plane. Not shockingly, sarcasm, in case anyone wasn't detecting that. 7 years down the line, I'm not needing time off for stress because my paradigm's getting changed every time I get into an argument with a fundy. Quite the contrary. It's like, oh, right, another proof of flat Earth. Oh, what are you going to do? They're all over the place because it's flat. Point proven. You can tell by the shock and awe and excitement in my panel and in Discord. You can almost taste it, can't you, audience? The excitement.
So you say that because it was me that's got to sit there for 2 hours, read the blogger, and then say these are the good bits. I think you're right. We were saying the other night, Mitchell and me and Tam were chatting, and these things come up. We enter them with open eyes and excitement as we're reading them, yeah? Not in any fear that something's going to pop out the page and suddenly prove it's a ball, because the more and more we research, all we get is more and more detail, yeah? And understanding historically everybody's viewed it as flat. And it's like we're getting into the sex and stuff. As you start to understand it really properly, you realise mathematically it's described as flat. So there's never a point now where we're entering into any topic where there's a boogeyman behind the page for us. But for them, they must be leaping out page after page for them. Each line creates problems for them, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, that's what we are, a constant problem, like a constant flow of water. So while in the pre-show I was talking about them taking the tactic to try and starve us in debate, well, if we just don't discuss it with them, then the problem goes away. It's like, no, it's more like a flowing river that's trying to be dammed up. The information's flowing because it's just the fact of life. We are on a flat plane, and that's going to get discussed. The dam's been breached. But if you imagine it as a flowing river with a series of dams, and everyone who's on the banks, being the anti-flat earthers, wanting to stop the flow of the river. Now, meanwhile, we're on, inflatables with cocktails just floating around in a dammed up bit. Going, yeah, I don't care if you dam it up. It's just going to crack. It's just going to fail. And then occasionally it does, and, you flow through the cracks, and as you do, you see all these anti-flat earthers throwing stones at you, but you just end up in another pool with your cocktail, hopefully still there. But then, further down the river, the reason you're in another pool floating around, not losing any sleep, bobbing along drinking a cocktail, is because somebody further down the river's going, we've got to stop this flow! There's something else they've come out with. Look what they've shown us from this International Law Society. We've got to stop the flow, got to stop it. Well, I'm not trying to stop any new flow of globe information that's coming our way. That stopped like a year and a half into debate. Like, there wasn't anything else new under the sun. You know, for us, there's always new stuff coming out. That's why I love the subject. That's why I picked it for my YouTube career. I'm like, oh, this will never get old. This has got longevity. Oh, yeah, great. An evergreen subject. When do you ever find, ever, on YouTube, an evergreen subject that's not completely already exploited? Never. It just doesn't happen. When I came across Flat Earth, I was like, wow, that's amazing. Evergreen subject that not everybody's already completely infected and it's totally, oversaturated. Well, you know, before it got to the chance of any sort of saturation, we had the kibosh put on us. Doesn't change the fact that the subject's still evergreen. And if I've got a good enough, dedicated enough audience sharing the show, the information's never going to change from the Globe Earth perspective. There's nothing new under the sun. They don't come out with anything new. But they've constantly got to dam up the waters as we dig through basically anything. Go, here you go, look how this shows it's flat. And they go, no, in paragraph 4, the guy said, but it's still a sphere. All right, that's a wonderful evidence when the entire basis of the cartography was based on flat Earth. But one sentence you cherry-picked, the guy expresses his personal opinion in the document. Wow, that's amazing evidence. Yeah, he's still describing how he measures it and navigates it flat. What are you going to address with that? Well, Nathan's very rude. That's what we get. That's the newest thing we get, new ad homs.
Nathan, can you go to the one slide in Master B, and I'll let Neil talk while you do that.
I think they're wondering why it's taking us so long. Think about that. Like, boy, these people are taking a long time to figure out that we're on a flat Earth.
Or the other way of looking at that, Neil, is that it's taken this long for the paradigm that's completely false to get exposed. We don't know where we are in history in terms of, are they ramping down the heliocentric claim? Or are they ramping it up? I don't know. For all we know, it's only been in existence for, at the bare minimum, I've got to be honest, about 150 years. But if that is the case, then it's ramping up. They're trying to give us a one world religion. And that one world religion's heliocentrism, and we're on an upward arc. And if we persist, the censorship will just have to increase. But it won't be censorship that's put out there and the public are told about. It'll just be under the radar. Well, put a line through his name, not under it anymore. And no one will know.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, Brian.
I think it's kind of a judgment day, but I'm not talking about it being... I reckon it is kind of part of Judgment Day itself. Let's just say let's say the more biblical Judgment Day, but it's kind of it's like a weeding out process that some people are doing to find out. It's like as if they're finding out either who would be their greatest enemies or who would be thinking like them. Let's just say there's some people out there who are in positions of power, and it's like as if they are allowing a game to take place.
Go on then. I've got a couple of minutes left on the live show, Brian. You got anything to support this, or can we move on to 10th man's diagram on there?
Speculation. One speculation. But I will say, it's like you have said yourself that it's like a paradigm shift. But somebody is controlling this paradigm shift. If you see it as kind of like a game that you don't realize you're in, or a weeding out process. I don't have maybe the correct term, but they're trying to find out who will see through the lie and who won't, and even those that do, who will truly see through it, or who will excel at it, or that kind of thing.
Okie dokie. Thank you for that, Brian.
Well, it could mean that your YouTube channel could be massive in years to come, or it could mean that nobody will know of us.
Like the guy yesterday. Hope springs eternal. 10th, got your celestial sextant bodies. Sorry,
That's not
celestial body sextant angles.
Can we ask for a shout out, 10th? Yeah.
Go on.
Well, just before we round out, because after show will be too late. But yeah, me and 10th are on Mitchell's tonight, aren't we? to dip or not to dip. So yeah, if anyone's about 7 o'clock UK time, me and Tom's going to go over.
Do you want to put your Shakespearean whatever?
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll tell you what I'll do. No. I'll save it until the after show, so that it only premieres on Mitchell's. But then all of Nathan's members will see it.
All right, that's
as
fair.
well,
That's
and then
fair.
it'll go out on the reel, won't it? So.
You want to be on the after show to see this magnificent document of history we found. It's phenomenal.
Hey, well, a shout out to America Silver Patriot, who says, hats off to you guys. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat. Right, let's take my thumbnail off with legally flat to dip or not to dip, what I've titled today's show, and stick on the sextant celestial body angles.
Yes, this is from a navigation site. It's not something I did. But as you can see here with the boat and the right angle triangle to get the initial sextant reading, is it on screen? People can see it?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So is this the way you do it? Teeter-totter? I mean, this is funny. If you look at the ship, the hull is out of the water. So if you were to tip this, to put the ship on the globe, that right angle would be aiming towards some star in the sky, and that baseline wouldn't be on Earth anymore. If you did it the other way, only a part of that baseline would be on a curved surface, and the ship would be off the water. They're showing you their problem in this one picture. They are showing you how navigation is done with a right angle, triangle, to the observer with a sextant. After dip correction is done to get it to the ocean level, as shown here, and that sun image, that sun is directly over the Earth somewhere, but based on this picture, it's sideways. It's not a 90. This is the best one picture debacle of the whole system right here. They need the top one to be right, but it can't work on a curved surface. But if you take away the globe and put a flat Earth, it works perfectly. I'm done.
With that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So, a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels, and everyone who hit the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, and all that good stuff. Also below this video you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy, and this is of note if you drive an electric vehicle. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on a premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!
It's a lot of fun to be with all the panel members on the journey we're on. I must say I'm enjoying every part of it.
Me too. It's exciting. I like being a flat earther. It's good fun. And if you ignore all of the debate, which is what I do my show on, there are certain aspects of the world that you get to be in wonderment of, and previously you weren't. It was like, that works like that. I always use the why is the sky blue example. It was one of the first things I asked. It's like, you ask it when you're a kid, you get a crap answer from your parents, you go on to learn how light scatters in a heliocentric model, and then you come to flat earth and go, I don't know anything about the sky, do I? I really don't have a clue about it. And I just have to accept that. But you've got two choices at that point. Is it like, oh no, so scary, I don't know? Or, wow, I don't know. Maybe I'll be the one to find out.
That's all part of the weeding out process, Nathan. That's what I'm talking about.
agree with Brian, by the way. He's
Yeah.
right.
Me and Neil are going to be chosen, Nathan. I don't know about you. Your attitude is not the best.
Chosen? Chosen for what? You talking about the rapture or something? Have you been to? Recently revisited your church or something?
You were doing your outro when Neil said he can't stay mad. He's mad at everybody except for 2 or 3 people, and he was mentioning, and he left one name out there, and Brian comes in and says, "I hope I'm that third guy."
Yeah, I'm looking to be chosen. Yeah. There's something going on, Nathan, and if you're not paying close attention, all your hard work could end up going down the Swanee.
What, in terms of
Say yourself that they're releasing it as
having
the way
yourself?
they want to release it.
What do you mean, Brian? In terms of having myself removed from YouTube, depersoned, so to speak?
No, it's YouTube. It's not YouTube. My God, no, it's much deeper than that. It's like there's certain things, and just like there's certain things that are part of this whole paradigm that's going on, change in a paradigm that's going on. And there's certain things that people scoff at, and they shouldn't scoff at them. They should take them more serious. Just like people used to scoff at flat Earth, they don't scoff at it anymore. Now it's just become an annoyance to the public because it won't go away. It keeps coming back. Do you know what I mean? People that people know keep on becoming flat earthers. Do you know what I mean? Tom is a flat earther now. He's with that Jim over there. 2 of them are flat earthers, and that Stacy and that, you know what I mean? That Fiona or that whoever. Do you know what I mean? They're all flat earthers now. Do you know what I mean? Whereas they weren't 2 years ago. This has become a bit of an annoyance. But it's the point I'm trying to make is that certain things within this paradigm that people aren't taken serious enough, and it's about you have to take on board who could change this paradigm, who's in a position to give us the paradigm we've been in before this, and who's in a position to change it back from that paradigm. And ask yourself, what would be important to them people? And what did they take serious that you're not taking serious? That's very cryptic, but that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, but Brian, I think we control that.
We don't. Sorry, take one. I'll tell you a second.
No, I was going to say, is Adam here? I want that slide up.
I mean, hold on. I'm interested in what Neil's got to say, because I almost said that, Neil. Go ahead. Express your sentiment in that regard. Go ahead, Neil.
I was saying, I think we control the paradigm shift, whichever way it's going, individually.
Oh, I misheard you. The, as opposed to my. Okay.
Yeah, well, the thing about it is you're only in control of your own of your own position within it. But the point is that it's like a competition. That you don't realize you're in, and people are watching.
Look, it's happening now. Gosh, can we get bogged down in this? It's happening now. People's response to the current things. Half the people take that response, the other half take this response. And what Brian is saying is that when other stuff is put out, that causes the shift of we're the norms. Now no longer are the norms. And how are you going to live your life when things are allowed and not allowed? If you have this or don't have that, you need a passport, you need this checked off before you're recognized as a citizen of this earth. So yeah, it's coming. I know what Brian is saying, and the Bible talks about it. So yeah, it's coming.
Sorry, what fear level am I at? Do I need to escalate from orange?
No, it's not. No, it's not a fear thing.
It's not fear. It's knowledge.
DEFCON Brown.
Okay, Adam, let's go to your slide. Such a beautiful Shakespearean. Am I right by saying Shakespearean?
Affirmative, Adam. DEFCON Brown. I'll change the bull.
DEFCON Brown. Yeah. We've gone to DEFCON Brown. Do you want me to share this slide? So I've just added.
That was on one of the trailers for Red Dwarf, right? So they're going into a situation that's obviously scary. and they're like,
P202.
he says, I want to have a purple alert. So
Second.
the
Leave it
robot
right
says, Ugh. Can you mute, please, Eli?
My bad. Sorry.
Yeah, Eli, you're terrible.
So the robot flicks the switch, and this light comes on with the word alert flashing in purple. And then as they get closer to the danger, the hologram character says, I want to escalate to red alert. And the robot says, are you absolutely certain you want to escalate it to red alert? It does mean changing the bulb.
I love
That's great. That's great. All right. This is epic. Come on, Adam. I can't wait.
Oh, time for building it up too much.
I'm building it up. I'm going with my first.
It was playing on my mind, wasn't it, that I wanted to just add a little bit to dip quote. So let me share it. So and then I'll.
Is anybody going to rattle it off in iambic pentameter or what?
No, I was struggling there. You ready?
Well, I'll start it off. To dip or not to dip, that is the correction.
Indeed. Whether 'tis nobler for the sexton to suffer the limitations of artificial horizons, or to take the eye against the sea of troubles, and by opposing, end them to define a level.
Epic.
Yeah, that's not in iambic pentameter.
Spot on. So
No, it's not. It's not spot on. If it was spot on, it'd be in iambic pentameter, which it's not. Somebody's written it out
See,
in...
you're in the wrong paradigm. Get back to our paradigm.
Look, you're butchering Shakespeare and you fucking know it. I'm outraged. As an actor, this is an outrage.
Oh, darling.
It looks like Adam.
He was the first Anglo-Saxon supremacist.
Yeah,
Boom,
there's
boom! Oh, went out of nowhere with the pun.
There's Adam. No, he had that the other day. It was a great pun. But
He put it there.
Look, can you all stop rumpusing 10th man? Go ahead, 10th man.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Adam is there.
Go ahead,
doing a
you've got the
little
mic.
I'm
The
trying.
mic's all yours.
Thank you. Keep saying it. There's Adam doing a little bit of skullduggery.
Boom, boom.
Listen, you can't deny the British accent. They even have movies about Jesus, and they all got British accents. You got movies about the freaking Greeks, right? The Spartans with all English accents.
They do the same with the Nazis, though, as well, don't they? They get British accents and all.
The problem is when
You guys don't understand the rules of Hollywood. Bad guys get English accent.
the problem is they all take a
And German.
Yeah, that's
Grandma
bad guys.
talking.
In terms of what people view the world as if they're over 40, bad guys, that's German guys, right? They're the bad guys in movie terminology.
Right, so they
They're
get
always
the
the foreigner.
accent.
Exactly. They get the British German accent.
Reminding me of freaking Obi-Wan Kenobi. I found out it was Alec Guinness.
The proud black Jewish lesbian Jedi, I find that very offensive.
It's Peter Cushing, though, that's Grand Moff Tarkin and everybody, they're all... Obi-Wan's a cuddly old man, but all the baddies are British elite.
Right, all Oxford accent, right? High British. Excellent.
apart from
I
Darth
love the
Vader.
Death Star scenes. I love them because of the way they talk.
Apart from Darth Vader, who was played by a tall white guy. They went, not black enough.
Yeah, you guys are
By
missing.
the way, Nathan,
You guys are sorry, Neil. Let me finish. You guys are missing the genius of each of these words of Adam's slide.
Have you ever heard the original, the on-set recordings of Darth Vader? You are part of the Rebel Alliance and scum. It's like a bit of a northern accent to hang to it. It's just classic.
Take her away. You watched the first movie, Carrie Fish got an English accent, and then it disappeared.
Well, there you go. Why didn't I use the Star Wars thumbnail today?
Hold on, Nathan. You brought up something the other day. You said, yeah, everybody wants to be a Han in rebuttal to me. But Han did turn around, save Luke, and become part of the Rebel Alliance. Huh.
So I was right then. Everyone
He was
wants to
also
be Han.
killed by his own son, by the way.
Those movies don't count. They suck.
Sorry, 10th man saying that we're ruining this point that's on screen right now.
I don't know what this Attila the Hun stuff is. We have a beautiful slide here.
You're confusing Jabba the Hutt with Attila the Hun.
Well, Attila the Hun was a farmer with a tilling tool.
Well, if he would have been Attila the Hutt, he would have gotten anywhere on horses.
That's the founder of Pizza Hut. All right. To dip or not to dip, that is the correction. Whether 'tis nobler for the sexton to suffer the limitations of our artificial horizons, or to take the eye against a sea of troubles, and by opposing, end them, to define a level. Gosh, this is so good.
It is excellent. My jokes about iambic pentameter aside, that's great. Who wrote that?
Adam.
Epic. I love it.
I think Adam, you're my man and everything, but I think you should have passed it over for Nathan to read it.
Well, he
Just
is.
saying.
He is more thespian than I.
No, that's okay. I'm glad it's going out on Mitchell's initially, though, because obviously other than the members who might catch this before Mitch's show goes out, the public get to hear this for the first time on his show, right? And I like creating a bit of buzz about various different things. So it worked so well with Arwin, right? When we did Arwin's fundraiser, we genned up a bit of buzz around Rob Durham's video. Now, no offence to Rob Durham, he could have just popped that video on public, and it probably wouldn't have met with very much fanfare. But, you know, by virtue of us just talking it up, making it an exclusive on Arwin's channel, and then obviously, because it's an exclusive on Arwin's channel, someone else, that was Mitch, wanted to put that information out, you know, pretty much straight away afterwards, and he did. So suddenly it goes from, here's this Rob Durham video, or did you see Rob Durham's video? Yeah, wasn't it good? Yeah, he's showing the teardrops and that. Yeah, that's great. It became a thing. Yeah? Well, that's how it should be with things like this. Well, why not big it up on the live show and have an exclusive on Mitch's channel and go through it in terms of this devastating argument that we're now basically taking the piss out of you with, fundies.
Haven't we always done that? Haven't we always done that, though? Like, even 3 years back, that's kind of how we did it. We would just discuss things, stumble upon it, even middle of the live show, and then discuss it afterward, and then we would make it an item, right? On somebody's channel.
Yeah, but
Nathan's the ace promoter. You
we're
should have
now
been
at
a
the
promoter.
stage.
Because it works really well.
I'm more talking about the teamwork aspect of it, actually, Arwin. I'm talking about the fact that as a team, we are stronger than individuals, and there are various different things as a... Dare I say this? God, I'm going to cringe when I say it, aren't I?
Go on, do it.
Hold on, let's get it out.
Don't
Do it.
As a community...
Oh.
Oh, God, I've got to go and have a wash.
I think we'd all just like take a moment and welcome them.
Just call it a clan.
Drop the land and put
Just
an
kidding.
alt in there.
What's the difference between a community and a cult?
A cult has penalties
just
if you
call it
leave.
a clan.
A cult has penalties if you leave. A cult has penalties if you leave.
Yeah, sounds just like what happened to Ranty.
He just did it to himself.
So
Well, I
now
feel
we've
like
got the legal man here.
yeah.
Can maybe he tell us more about what we were discussing
Oh,
earlier?
absolutely. Anthony, can you just scan through 10 pages of documentation and give us your opinion?
Hurry it up, will you?
My head's mashed already as it is today. No.
What?
I've come
No.
here to get a light relief.
God, it's like you don't even have a degree.
Do you know what? I've heard that said before, you know, and even no amount of evidence can ever persuade an idiot. The amount of evidence I've got that I have it is just It's not as if I've missed my tapes from landing on the moon kind of thing. I actually have the video, right?
Right, number
What a
one.
red herring. He said it's as if.
Number one, don't call me an idiot. Number two, I just don't believe you.
No.
It's as if you're not going to do any work for us, what's the point?
Yeah, if you're not going to scan read 10 pages and then tell us how it legally proves it's flat, then what use are you, basically, Anthony?
Isn't that in the bylaws? He's got to get kicked out of the community if he won't do that first thing.
Don't say that word again.
I think, but a cult is more like a group of people who are. I mean, because cult is short for culture, so it's like a behavior that everyone's down with, like an ideology that everyone's down with. We don't have an ideology. We're talking about reality. We just talk about it. You know?
Yeah, but I think
we should be defined as clans, not as a cult or a community.
I agree with all.
Who cares? Okay, this is completely arbitrary. Who cares?
Hierarchy.
Stop. Right, in terms of this subject, though, there is something that I did watch last night that I was a little bit taken back by, and I want to give props for. Did anybody watch Jeranism yesterday?
Yes, I wanted to bring it up, but I didn't want to break the subject.
No, absolutely break the subject. Before you do, props to Jaren. So what Jaren's done is he's gone, here are my detractors. I'm going to have them on my show, hear them out to the best of my ability, in spite of a bit of rumpusing from his own panel. Hey man, Jaren, I can totally relate. Anyway,
Yeah.
props to you.
Nathan.
Props to you.
It was great.
Hold on, let's just give Jaren props. He's having his detractors on and he's letting them put their case forward. Now, in a community where we have constantly highlighted, there's that word again, how our opponents will pat each other on the back no matter what nonsense they come out of. In this community, if you want to call Flat Earth that, there's a certain degree of, I'm not going to call it tolerance, but at least time for people who oppose our views. And everyone in this community has got very different views. But
I think I'm in the right.
putting out your olive branch to somebody that has basically said, you're all idiots, you're all Masons, you're all trans, you're all this. It's basically just name calling and ad homs. But ultimately having a point to make, which is, we feel, this is Jason and whatever is the other guy's name is, Robbie, is it? That our map would serve better. It's a better model. And you go, okay, well, let's see what you've got to say about it. And they did. And I got to hear that. I felt very privileged because there's no way I was going to go and watch and listen to them saying it. And if they're detractors of Jaren's and they're very critical of him, they managed to keep it on topic. They managed to segue away from all the ad homs, keep it away from the speculation, get to see their information. They presented it in the best light they could. I think Jaren did a fantastic job. The more time goes by, the more I'm sort of going, yeah, Jaren's evolving as a YouTuber in a way that I really like at the moment. And he's sort of expressing a lot of values just by what he's doing, not what he's saying, that I can get behind and go, I'm definitely going to promote that. That's awesome. Kudos to you, because those two guys, who I'm not going to mention their names again, are dicks. You know, they're dicks to you. They're massive dicks. So to have them on your show, they're getting promotion out of that. They'll have gained some growth out of that. You know, that's very courteous of you, and it shows a lot of gumption. So good for you, Jaren.
Agreed. Can I say something?
It was intriguing. I had to super chat. I was very rare. I've done that for Jaren, but it was for Iru. A voice of reason in that. He didn't get shouted out, by the way. Bad on you, Jaren. But literally, I don't think I would have tolerated listening to those guys or gone to their stuff, but it was good to see it there, listen to it, all my opinion of their stuff, which I won't go into. Like I said, it was great.
Let me describe it.
Shut the shit, man.
Oh, sorry.
I'm in the middle of a sentence. Hold your pants. It's easy.
We'll get to you next, Darwin. I know you've got some opinions on the map. I don't doubt that. Go ahead, Adam.
The final and the only point that put the chat was it was great to hear Iru dealing with a lot of stuff, and it was, I thought, quite pertinent to the topic that we had, and that's why I sat and listened and thanked Iru at the end, because what he's discussing, I think, is relevant to where we're at as well. Off you go, Owen.
Is it okay? All right.
Yes.
Yes.
I finished my sentence now, you see.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Owen,
I thought you did before, but
Go
it
ahead.
must have sounded out for some reason. That happens sometimes. I'm getting a lot of aberration on my interface. Yesterday, I came here. I was talking for a minute, and then I realized no sound came through whatsoever. So,
Okay, stop. We can all hear you. Right. We're talking about the map that was presented by Jason yesterday on Jaronism's channel. Subscribe today. Go ahead, Arwen.
Yes. So to me, it stood out. I was studying the psychology because, Jason is a real serious case. I'm not even going to name it.
Oh,
but it
God,
really...
stop.
Yeah, no, it's involved. It's involved. Because it led to the eventual false dichotomy that they were all arguing over, which I find hilarious, right? But Jason has actually pointed out a couple of observations that nobody was able to handle, including himself. Namely, he's attempted to create some kind of a model out of the holographic heavens, but he just doesn't call it that. He doesn't use the lingo at all. He has his own lingo, completely separate from everybody else, right? But eventually, what I stood out to me was they were just arguing over whose projection was literal. They were both claiming the map is the terrain, and they were both, my claim of the map being the terrain is the real one, and both are wrong. And they should have realized that, but they didn't.
So I just want to summarise that, because that was the main thing I was going to end on, actually, Alwyn. But yeah, so the main aspect that I pulled away from it, and pretty much where I switched off, is when they started talking about Space Invaders, but the game, which I won't get into either. But I thought they'd just presented a false dichotomy with reification fallacies on both sides. That's all they'd done. And Alwyn summarised it better than I, so I won't paraphrase what he's just paraphrased, so there's no need. But that's all it was. False dichotomy, reification fallacy. Okay? Now, yeah, there are interesting aspects of it. When the map came up on screen, I'm like, okay, I've seen this before. They said they'd got an adaptation of it, and I looked at the adaptation, it was just coloured in, which they did declare. Fair enough to them. 10th man wants to join. Wasn't he already here? Weird. Hey, 10th.
Maybe sound issues.
10th, you okay?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just switching to my phone.
Okay, no worries. It's just, it doesn't normally re-ask for permission. It's just because you've changed device, fine. So yeah, false dichotomy and reification fallacy by them. And moreover, I thought it was an interesting look at how Jaren, specifically Jaren, behaved towards them and is dealing with them. You know, similar to how RV Truth was dealt with previously by Dave, in a less cordial way by Dave, because he was a lot more pissed. Rightly so. But, you know, the guys over on the Baby Truther show are doing this more and more. And I can see them clearing out weeds. You know, they've got a big scythe and they're just clearing out weeds. And you think, that's really interesting to see. And I know it's led by Jaren, which is why I'm focusing on him predominantly in my props that I'm giving. So, yeah, interesting show. False dichotomies aside. Their models crap. I'm not trying to antagonise you, Arwyn, but I don't know if anybody else has got any allegiance to the idea that you can go off one side of a screen and come back on the other. Anybody? God. That's where I switched off, by the way. That's where I was like, okay.
Well, they didn't address any orientation issues, right? They were just using projection. They weren't even like approaching it like, hey, is this actually a Euclidean straight line? Right? Jason didn't address that at all. So you never get to find out. It's just like, my projection is better than your projection. Now let's assume it's all physically literal and try to represent what it is, right? That's what Jason is doing. In a way, that's what David Weiss is doing, not as much as Jason. Jason's really going far with that. And I also wanted to note that I thought that Jaren was really a good neutral party, even to his own panel members, because it got rowdy and he wasn't like, yeah, Jason, you're wrong. He was really neutral, and yeah, that's admirable. He was really trying to be the neutral party in the discussion.
Yeah, hard to do when I know damn well what they've said about him and the kind of things they do. So yeah, a very difficult situation to find yourself in. But on the other hand, you know, he's got his sickle, he's clearing out the weeds, and job's a good one. You know, in terms of the back and forth within the false dichotomy, which I suppose we can, just for the ease of discussion, ascribe to Dave, when Dave's saying, well, no, the azimuthal equidistant map is better because blah, 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 versus, no, my map's better because if you think of how Space Invaders work, you go off one side of the page of the screen and come back on the other. So that's why this part of the map, which is blatantly obviously not how it works. and you go, okay, if you look at that false dichotomy, Dave Weiss recognises what he is using that map for. Now, having discussed this on multiple occasions with Dave and Mark and various other people who use this map, they all recognise that it's a tool. It's not a reified version of the world. We haven't got that. No such thing will ever exist. The map is not the terrain. Now, in terms of how that map works, they all understand how the azimuthal equidistant map works and how it projects things. Now, don't get me wrong, so does Jason when he's describing it. So when they're describing the faults and getting around it by just having us decide that it's okay to go off one side of the page and come on the other, that's not a great justification. And it isn't what Dave Weiss does when he holds up the map. He's not saying, this is how you should view the world, like they're saying. You should not only view the world like this, you should go out and preach it. That's what they're telling them. Terrible position to find yourself in when you're, stacked up against someone like Dave Weiss, who's like Mr. PR for Flat Earth. Shit, you're not going to get away with that crap. And it's not like he's cast his anchors into a reified model of the world. I know that because I've spoken to him personally on many occasions. That's Dave Weiss. It's a tool. Now, if your tool's better, and he almost said that, I don't know if he phrased it the way I'm going to phrase it now, but I'm paraphrasing what Dave basically said to them. If your tool's better, I'll use your tool. If you're saying it's better for driving in these screws than my hammer that I've got now, then I'll have a look at it. Oh, look at that. It turns the screw much better. I'll use that from now on. He's perfectly open to seeing something that works as a model, as a tool, to open people's eyes to the nature of reality, which is that we live on a flat plane. Well, that tool isn't going to be something that he's going to say, oh no, if you show that it doesn't work in a certain aspect, I'm going to suddenly realise the Earth's a sphere, or we've got a Pac-Man model where we go off the side of simulated screens that we're, their justification was showing Space Invaders. Because it works like this in Space Invaders. What? That's your justification. This is a crap tool. I'd sooner stick my mark next to the azimuthal equidistant map than next to that. Because no Joe Normal's going to look at that and go, oh, yeah, I totally understand it. They're going to see that flaw and run a mile back to their sphere because they won't recognise what a false dichotomy is. There you go, I'm done. Anybody else got any comment on the show yesterday?
Because this is my field, the looping part, right, you're addressing. I want to address that. I'm going to call dibs, right?
Okay, well, I want to go after Arwen then.
Well, can Brian get his point? You've had one, and then you can go after. You've got more than anybody to say on the subject. Doesn't mean you go next every time. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I didn't watch any of the show there last night, and I think Neil was to get into, but I didn't watch any of that last night. I don't care about it. It's not of interest to me. But as far as what you're talking about goes, there's a problem, and that is that airlines use longitudinal distances and longitudinal directions, which means they're going south to north all the time, and not east to west. If you know what I mean, it's like the Pac-Man model. That's a looping east-west, but airlines don't do that. Airlines go north-south. So and I can attest to the route I took when I went to Los Angeles from London. And other routes I took to Tokyo, to Sydney, to Paris, to Verona, and other places. I can attest to those routes, and as in when I say attest to them, I can show how they fit way better on an AE projection than anything else.
That was what I did with my wife, because I said to them, as soon as the map popped up and I was like certain that was what they were claiming and there wasn't any adjustments on the next colouring version, I was like, yeah, that's just wrong. And then I walked away from the iPad and my wife asked me, she was like, why are they wrong? And I just detailed a few routes that I'd flown. And I was like, that doesn't work, some I hadn't flown, I won't lie. And I was like, these don't work on that map. And I was very quickly just showing her how they don't work. And she's like, oh, yeah, okay, I get it. And it was at that point that they then went on to justify how it didn't work. So her and I both watching this stuff, looking at each other going, what? Really? That's how you justify this? So, my wife is pretty much indifferent to this subject, but she's subject to it because I'm watching it. And, her reaction, if you need to, if you're watching this, Dave Weiss, right, my wife's reaction is all you needed to know in that regard, which is the look on her face was, that don't make no sense to me. Now I'm not trying to convert her to Flat Earth. She was just overhearing what was being said. Now, did it make her go, oh, wow, yeah, you know what? I'm going to take that into the office. No. She was looking at me with a frowny face going, what? What? That's how you explain it? This is after, like I say, I pointed out a few rudimentary flights that don't work. Arwin, go ahead.
I'm sorry, what were we talking about?
Talking about the looping. You were going to go on to justify looping.
Yeah, because that just completely got drowned in this point, which I have a few things to say about as well. Namely, flight routes doesn't prove the actual orientation of the land masses versus each other. It just determines that flight routes are taken in a very specific fashion. From what I've learned in general, they just try to avoid the open seas. Because if there's issues and you go past land masses, there's less hazard risk, right? Because if something breaks down in the middle of the ocean, you're screwed as a plane. You might not even be found back if you crash, right? So that's absolutely no proof for the orientation of the land masses versus each other. Let's start out with that. As for the looping part, it's a matter of perspective. You can call it, you can say like, oh, there is portals here. There's like a portal line from there on there. Or you could just realize, wait, it's all a continually shifting thing underneath your feet. You're always the center, wherever you are. And if you go west enough, eventually you'll just end up at the same place. The trainman station effect. There is no distinct portal border just because a map projection may have cutoff points and then say, yeah, here is where it connects to the other side. Well, guess what? In the physical reality, which it is supposed to represent, that's just a continual space. There is no border or anything or a portal. That's nonsense, right? When it comes to looping conception. The looping conception emphasizes a singular contained space that literally just loops in on itself, like it is all one giant wormhole conceptually, because that's a conceptual representation that some people might have heard of. Doesn't mean there's a literal hole somewhere or border. It just means the very space is interconnected with itself in a specific fashion. That is the looping.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for the detailed description of the very thing that I'm telling Dave Weiss. Yeah, my wife looked at me with that look of, what the holy hell is he on about? When that was described in a different way with how it works on the screen with, Space Invaders going off one side and coming back on the other. Well, okay. You've given a more eloquent description and said what it's not. But you've also said what it is, and coincidentally, just so you know, what you've said it isn't is what you've said it is. Moving around and, going through one side of the train station, coming back out the other, even though from your perspective, you're just going to go to the end of the tunnel, but it's the same place you started at. Well, okay, that's a better way of describing what looping would be, or Pac-Man model would be. But so what? That doesn't make it anything like what I experience in physical reality, and in no way can I ascribe that to the land masses.
But how do you know, though? How do you know the orientation? Are you really certain
I'll take that
there
as
is a Euclidean circle over the Earth, right?
Okay, because I can't disprove it. Anything's possible, right. Arwin. That's fascinating. Can you prove that is physically capable of happening other than a justification for the maps in the first place? The answer is no.
Yes.
No, you can't.
Yes, it would.
You would have done it
possible.
already. You haven't.
Yes, it would be possible.
If you're going to get... stop. Just don't let this descend. If this is going to turn into another description of what looping is, descriptively, then that isn't.
No.
Then that isn't showing it.
Hello?
Hello? That isn't proving it. Now, if you had that, you would have already offered it, Arwin.
I have offered it. I've said it
so you think you've offered it
times for
fine.
over 6 years,
Okay.
Nathan.
Okay.
Exactly how to do
I don't need this bloody headache at the end of the show. Thank you. No.
Well, then don't say that I can't.
God. No, you haven't.
You brought it up.
Dealing with triggered people who don't like their concepts being challenged. No, Arwin, you haven't shown anything that infers that. It's a justification by way of description for how the model doesn't work. It doesn't show anything, and you would have offered it already if it did. Saying, I have already, you haven't. I don't want to hear that you have. You haven't.
I haven't physically transversed the Earth, but I know exactly how you can prove or disprove it. And I have explained this for over 6 years. So don't tell me that I haven't, because I have in detail, time and time and time and time again. Just because you refuse to accept it or you forgot about it doesn't mean that I haven't, because I have.
Oh, right.
You
What
move
is
in a
it?
straight line. If you end up in the same location, even though you haven't changed angle during the travel, then yeah, you explain it then. How
Okay,
you can
hold
end
on,
up
stop.
in the exact
Stop. Don't burden a proof reversal fallacy me, Arwin. You've just said if you travel in a straight line, I listened to the mild description that you stopped halfway through. Yeah, okay, I travel in a straight line. Never once have I ended up back where I started. So that's flawed.
Oh, really? So have you literally tried that? I haven't.
Yes, there's been many
Nobody really
occasions.
has done that so far.
Yes, many occasions where I've walked in a straight line and not once have I arrived back where I started. I'd be walking in a curved line, if that was the case.
Really?
Yes, that's really, yes.
Well,
that's,
you
that's
haven't
yes.
walked a straight line
Stop
long
just
enough
chanting
because
through
it's
me.
about the realm,
Hello?
not about
Please,
your room.
Arwin, why are you doing this?
Because I'm defending my concept.
So
Yeah?
if it was real, you'd
You're
do it
poo-pooing
calmly.
it.
You wouldn't do it by just chanting through me and telling me
I'm
that
not
you've shown it
chanting.
already when you've just described an explanation with the words conceptual in it. So you don't bullshit me and just chant through me. There's no need. Right,
I'm
no,
not.
I've never
Can I
walked
say
in a...
something?
You're straw manning me. If you continue this,
no,
I'm gonna
not
drop.
one. No.
Don't straw man
It's kind
me,
of like when
Nathan,
you
or I'm gonna
are
drop.
playing a video game and
Okay,
you
go on
walk
then.
to one side
Off
of
you
the
go.
room and
Yeah,
he pops
goodbye.
up on the other side of the
Okay.
screen.
So, yeah, I've never once walked in a straight line and arrived back where I started. That's what you've just described. When I challenge you that you haven't shown it, you've described it, you bugger off. Okay? That's not my problem. I don't need the headache of you saying I've proved it when you haven't. No, nobody's teleporting by walking in straight lines. That does not happen in reality.
The issue I've always
Let me add something quick.
with that model, yeah, I'll just finish here and I'll be quick, is that the teleporting, however you want to describe it, is a solution for the problem that the map doesn't, you knowingly know the map does not match reality. So it's a bit like dark energy. You've got a failed model, so you have to put something in that you've never experienced in reality to fix the problem. It's not like you've ever experienced this. I walk in a straight line and suddenly I'm back in the train station. If that was a part of reality, you would incorporate it into the model, but you've not put it in there because it's a part of reality. You've put it in there because it fixes the problems with the model.
Precisely. Right, just one sec. Just one sec. In the same exact way, if your azimuthal equidistant projection only works from the centre out and you're trying to describe how that is the land layout and you move across the map, suddenly things go wrong. Suddenly distances don't work how you'd like them to. So what do? Well, there's a problem to that. You say flights go at 1,900 miles an hour. Obviously. And I'm going to now spend my time justifying the problem with the model and map by proving that you've got flights that go in excess of the speeds they say. They're travelling on the jet streams far faster than they said. Oh, right, so you're just trying to justify this model, this reification, by coming up with some crazy scenario and describing it. Now, it doesn't mean it actually takes place in physical reality, or can you show it actually happening. It's just a justification for the failed model. That's all it is. Going over one side of the screen and coming in the other, that's just because the model doesn't work. That's all that is. Go ahead, Righteous.
Okay, so do we not see that in reality, though? That's my question to you guys.
So when have you ever travelled in a straight line, and arrived back where you came from?
Wait a second. What have we been talking this whole time on Flat Earth debate shows for a couple of months?
Don't accuse me of having a circular
straight
show.
Lines. Well, let me finish. Sexton, straight lines, parallel lines. Is that not straight?
Yeah, and if you travel to one end or the other of a parallel line, or between them, do you ever arrive back where you started?
Well, people circumnavigate using straight lines with the sextant.
They're travelling in a curve.
Again, it's assumption. You're assuming it has to be something to try and fit some other part of the model that doesn't quite work. And to Owen's point about that we can't prove orientation of land, the emergency flights where they've had to emergency land, that does bring the orientation back down to the Earth. So
I'm not talking about flights. Let's not keep things.
I know
very,
that
very
you're not
simple,
talking. That's why I
point.
said Arwin's point. Arwin's point was that you cannot attach once the plane's in the air. You've got no bearing over what you're flying over. My point is that the emergency landings show a coupling between where you'd be in the air and what landmass you are below you. So there is some link between that. But the idea of looping, come on, Righteous, you're smarter
Look,
than
I'm
that.
not even saying looping. I'm not even making any claims.
Well, then hold on. Then
I'm
your
just
interjections.
pointing.
Hold on.
I'm just
Then your interjections not on
hold on.
topic. Then your interjections are not on topic. Arwen's dropped because he's claiming looping. He's saying he's explained it when he described it, and he didn't. Then when he came to explain it, he said you travel in a straight line, and his descriptions, because he dropped, would infer that when you travel in a straight line, you arrive back where you came, like in the train man example in The Matrix.
Well, I'm just describing that Rob Durham video. Remember that Rob Durham video? Remember how he was using that against like the globe? But it's also demolishes the idea that we're going in a circle also.
We're not talking about
That's
going
all I
in a
was
circle.
pointing out to.
We're not. That's not what we're talking about.
We're not going in a circle.
It doesn't.
We
You're
fly
getting
and move
confused.
straight
Hold
lines.
on a second.
East and west are always circles.
Hello.
Can I just say something real quick? Can I say something real quick?
Radio check.
Okay.
When you go from A to B in a straight line, okay, you get to the end of B, right? Once you get to B, you wind back up at A.
No. Go ahead, QE.
Yeah, I wanted to add something. It's a simple concept getting conflated here. Navigators use gyro compasses these days to navigate. You use the sextant to pinpoint your location. Follow there, Righteous. You don't have a sextant out on the bridge navigating. Hey, turn it toward the bow. No. Follow.
All right. But I was pointing out to the teardrop shape. Remember the teardrop shape?
Yeah.
Well, we can't triangulate unless we have like perfect circles, right?
No, you can't get an elevation angle without a flat level baseline. Teardrop shape's another different story about
triangulation.
Wrapping their map. It's not teardrops are not triangulation. Triangulation comes from, first of all, getting an elevation angle.
All right. Well, then I'm talking about when you have two circles, you have a rough idea where you are, but when you add a third circle, then you can pinpoint exactly.
That's correct.
Right. Right.
Yes.
So they got to be perfect circles to be able to make that pinpoint.
That's correct.
That only works. That only works with parallel lines on a grid-based map. The map
That
has
only
to be
works-
grid-based.
The map has to be flat to have a circle of equal altitude.
Right, but it also
Sorry
has to
about
be grid-based.
Sorry about
parallel
that. We're getting
lines.
off topic here. I just wanted to correct you on the navigation part. Do you follow that?
Yeah.
That was my only point.
Can I summarize it? He's saying when you establish where you are, that's not actually moving around. You just, if you've lost your position, you then figure out where you are, and then you can start moving forward with the gyro compass, and that's how you're actually navigating. So the start point is, where the hell am I? That's what you need triangulation for.
Yeah, the latitude and longitude grid, because it's a sky grid. That grid will help you pinpoint your position. But they do use, like just towards what Roger is saying, they do use grid reference, like airlines, and they use Grid North, and I think I wouldn't be surprised if the Mariners also use Grid North, and that as well. They use the XYZ grid, because that is
Military
the
uses
XYZ
Universal Transverse Mercator.
Yeah, I know that, but the Universal Transverse Mercator can be transformed into a grid. Have you ever seen the grid? A lot of they transform it into a grid, the XYZ grid. It's all the same. They can do it that way. They can do it in different ways. But the XYZ grid is a flatter grid. It doesn't work on a sphere in any way, shape, or form. So as long as the map is flat, the XYZ grid can go onto it. Whereas the latitude, longitude pinpoints your position. You're using the sky to pinpoint your position.
Thanks.
No worries.
We
Okay,
good? Because Righteous, what was your point?
Well, all navigations and maps are based on grids.
Oh, now, well, yeah, I
Hold on.
suppose
I
so.
think I know where he's going. He's saying if you've got the Mercator projection, then if you're navigating on the far right-hand side, yeah. So let's say you're right on the, what would it be, the eastern tip of Russia, and you're trying to navigate there. Well, then how do you work the map when you've got it going over to the other side? Right? Is that what you're asking?
Just you're never going to be at one side of that. You'll always be in the middle of it. From what Armin's talking about, you'll never be at one side of it. You'll be in the middle at all times. View it that way. And the militaries, when they have it out on their light table, they flick around, they flick across. So it's like they have a looping type map where they're never at one side of it. Do you reckon anyway?
Yeah, I understand how you could scroll if you imagine the Mercator being on a scroll. But then you've still got that awkward issue of how does that actually work? Now, obviously for these grids to work, with the GPs lining up to the actual positions at a given time, then they've got to have plotted the maps out with the stars as their base, and then distorted them from there to make them work on a sphere, hence all the different projections. But we don't know how that's been done. Nobody's back-engineered that yet. So in terms of us knowing that you've got to draw a circle on a Mercator projection, well, yeah, that's true. But we don't know how the Mercator projection has been taken from the stars to project down onto the Earth, because it's not from a globe. That much is without doubt. So where else can it be coming from? Well, what are you using? Well, you're using the stars. So that must be the origin of it all, in terms of where they say, well, if this star's above this point at this particular moment in time, then that's its GP. Well, that'll be where it can sit on the map. Well, it works, but with how complex does it go? How many layers has it gone through to get to that stage to work in the way it does, based on the stars being the thing that actually put the land where it is, which shouldn't be the case, right? That the land is what it is. It's set in stone, for want of a better word. And if you have the land being capable of being measured and laid out how it actually is, then shouldn't we just have a map that is what it is by now, instead of this transposition from the stars that happens to work on certain projections if they're laid out in certain ways? Because that doesn't work, because you get to the edges and you go, oh no, you've got to scroll the map along and then put your position in the middle with, Russia on the left and the States on the right, and then it'll work.
Yeah, see, the Universal Transverse Mercator that Rob shows. See, there's a problem with that map too, and people aren't pointing it out, and that is north and south. Like 60 degrees north and 60 degrees south, basically, that's all distorted. So that's a distortion of 60 degrees north and 60 degrees south. If you look at that map, it starts distorting from there up and, let's say, there down. So like the thing about it is that they're using a map that they believe there is a globe map, but it's not a globe map because it has to be flat. So the reason the Universal Transverse Mercator even exists is purely only due to the fact that they needed to keep believing that it was a globe while also using a flat map and dealing with the world as flat. They could tell themselves, well, that's just a cylinder projection of the globe, when it's not.
That brings me. Yeah, that brings me to my question. My question is, because I've asked a few times, and we've spoken about it, and we say, it's a globe projection. And my question is, what makes it a globe projection? What makes the Mercator a globe projection? Why do you say that, Nathan?
Well, the thing about it is that it's claimed to be a globe projection, but I understand.
No, I know, but Nathan has said it, and he said it, with authority. Why does he say it? Is my question.
Because they can mathematically place everything. Oh, sorry, sorry.
It is what it is. It's described as a globe projection. And when they describe how they've acquired that flat map, it's shown in Rob Durham's video in a great graphical way, where they show literally the pinpoints of light from each piece of land throwing itself from the globe out onto the cylinder of the flat paper. And it's explained by Rob Durham thereafter that that's why you have the extra bits of land that work in the gaps, because you've got more paper than you have when you've got a sphere. The surface area is bigger, therefore you've got extra bits of paper. But that is how they describe the Mercator projection as being derived. Now, it can't be, because if you look at the Gall-Peters for a start, although that graphic looked wonderful, it isn't correct. Because if it was correct, you'd end up with the Gall-Peters, according to their cylindrical projection methodology. Because then you'd have the size of the land actually projected out in the ratios that they actually are, but you wouldn't have the circles working on the map. Now, that can only tell you one thing in terms of if it's come from the stars, then those positions have got the distortion that the stars are inducing by whatever method that they're produced, being induced from the ground at the ground position of the stars in the north. So obviously we've got distortions in how the stars represent on the ground from those ground positions. Because when you project it onto a map and have them working so that your position can be triangulatable, you end up shrinking down the land. Can you go on mute, please? So you're shrinking down the land to make it work in terms of geographical distance, but yet the land distance is considerably smaller by scale. So it's like, why would it be necessary to distort the map? Well, the justification is the globe projection justification. So they've distorted it because it's come and you've got the extra paper. That's why it's distorted. But as Rob Durham pointed out, if it was the case, it wouldn't work the other way around, which it doesn't. So when they say it's come from a globe, it must work on a globe. You must be able to still draw the same circles, not have it work nicely on the flat projection and then not transpose back onto the globe. Why would you be transposing it back onto the globe in the first place? Because they call it a globe projection. That's what it is.
Yeah, the thing about it is the circles of equal altitude, as long as the map is flat, right? Somewhat of a workable map. As long as it's flat, and all the latitude and longitude lines are where they're supposed to be, let's just say. Then the thing about it is that it'll work. Circles will work. You'll always be able to draw a circle on a flat map, no matter what. But when you try and transverse that or turn that into a globe, you're going to mess everything up. It's going to distort and warp everything you do on your flat map. You know, the globe that's why I've said it before, and I'm sure hundreds of other people have said the same thing. It's just a mathematical model. It's a mathematical belief, a mathematical model. That's all it is. It has no basis in reality, no basis for navigation.
If I can pose it in a question. Sorry, I'm getting quite a bit of backfeed.
That's okay, go ahead.
I've often asked how many grid lines that are perpendicular does it take to make a round circular map? In the same way that we ask how many flat sections of the earth make up that sphere that everyone believes in their mind. When we're on the earth, we measure grid pattern. And I think that's what maybe Righteous was trying to allude to, is that all of our maps have an X and a Y axis, which are perpendicular by 90 degrees. And there's these little grids, these little squares. Everything's measured within that square. And then at some point it becomes a circle. Now it becomes a circle because of a central north pole, that even on a sphere or a flat earth, your north on one continent is slightly northeast, and on another continent it's slightly northwest. So there is some kind of a convergence towards a center, which then means we lose the grid pattern at some point. But yet all our maps are grid pattern until we go into globe projection, where suddenly it circles with a central north, and then these concurrent or these rings getting larger and larger as they go out.
Right, that's what I was saying. And I got to step out too, by the way, guys. So thank you for having me.
Pleasure.
The question, how many square grid lines to get a circular map.
But you just have to start at the North Center. Now, I don't know how big the North Center is. I have an idea of how big it is. It's bigger than they show it on the globe, right? Even if you just go by the longitude lines, it makes it a lot bigger, right? Because if you just use the Gleason's map and you just use the longitude lines as radiuses for the equator and for the tropics and different things, then it changes the size of everything, right? Everything is all those circles get bigger. But all you have to do for a grid map, and there is a grid north map, different maps that show grid north. All you have to do is know the size of the North Center. Start with your first square there, then bring squares out off of that, and it won't
But
matter
isn't that
what.
also assumption? Sorry,
Well, I'm only saying,
North Pole
but I'm only working
also...
off of the best model I can come up with. If you want to use the term model, or map, if there's a North Center, then you just start with a square there, and within that square you can have smaller squares. That's the beauty of the XYZ, the Cartesian. It can be the squares can be as small or as big as you want. But the thing about it is, you start with a let's say an average size, and you just work out from that. Because if you put a square on each side of that square, you can then put squares into the corners. You just build it out in squares. It's just Lego. Do you know what I mean? That's all you'd have to do. And you just use smaller and bigger squares. That's basically what Cartesian is. So see, the thing about it, the Cartesian grid, our Cartesian coordinate system, and like that always works. It's used by airlines. It's used by surveying. It's used by everyone and anyone, right? Cartography, right? Everyone who's maps for everyone that maps are important to, they use Cartesian, and it always works. Why? Because we're on a flat plane. It doesn't work on a curved surface. You can't use a Cartesian coordinate system on a sphere. It just doesn't work. No, what way you want to twist or turn it, no matter where the layout of the land of all the land and continents are, doesn't matter. The fact that Cartesian works means it's definitely flat.
With that, I'm going to say another huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, joining as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. Also, below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy, and this is a particular note if you drive an electric vehicle. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!